Mrs. Bleuler. Thank you so much for being with me today. Would you, without further ado, introduce yourself, please, and the Swiss Startup Association, its mission, its services, so that we can dive right into that big topic.
Thank you, Eloise. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Regula Bleuler. I'm the Managing Director of the Swiss Startup Association. We have basically two main goals and objectives for our association. We are the umbrella association of the Swiss startups. So we give the startups a voice in the Swiss political environment. We have these two goals. One of them is to represent the Swiss startups in the political environment in Switzerland, and also to improve the conditions in Switzerland for startups. Sometimes they're not so favorable. So we're trying to work and make that better, to make Switzerland sort of the number one startup hub in Europe. And the second goal is we not only want more startups in Switzerland, we want better educated startups. So being an entrepreneur is very challenging. So just because you have a great idea doesn't mean you are going to be a successful entrepreneur or startup founder. So we try to help startups to be like this one-stop shop for them, where they can find everything from networking opportunities across Switzerland to education, so videos, online education, but also face-to-face education, like workshops, where we provide them with literally all the knowledge, from legal knowledge to sales and marketing knowledge, or very specific knowledge about taxes, or all these kind of things that you need to know and come across as a startup founder. So we want to help them with that. And then last but not least, we sort of have this huge library of tools with over 50 discounted tools for startups whenever there is, say a big tech company that offers like a Microsoft for startups, or other similar offers. Then we collect that with us, so you don't need to Google everything and find it yourself. And for some of some companies even offer further discounts for our members, so you get an extra 20% off or so if you're a startup. So we try to help them, make them successful. I think bottom line is that what we want.
That's amazing. Thank you. I'll definitely make sure to put a link about it at the bottom of the video. And yes, being a one-stop shop sounds fantastic to save resources and gain some time for sure. And so let's say that startup would like to launch itself in Switzerland, or that they're abroad and they want to branch in our country. What would be the main assets? What would be the main convincing arguments for being a Swiss startup?
So I think there's two views. So on one hand, it's just Switzerland as a country, but also Switzerland having been voted as one of the most innovative countries in the world for a few years in a row. And I think this is we have two of the best universities in the world, namely ETH in Zurich and EPFL in Lausanne, as being part of the best universities in the world. And so they really provide the environment for bright and talented young entrepreneurs. So that's one thing. So you'll also find extremely educated workers for your startup. At the same time, Switzerland is in the middle of Europe, in close proximity to the big cities. Within an hour of flight, you're in London or in Paris, or pretty much anywhere in Europe. It's the quality of life is very high. It's very international. It's safe. So there is, I guess, the ideal environment to set up shop and work from here and create your startup.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing all of these valid points. And if we reverse the question, in terms of challenges, do we have some? What would they be in a nutshell?
Of course, there are some. For the startups itself, financing rounds. So as soon as they have reached a certain stage, it's hard. It's easy to find early stage capital for the startups, but as soon as you're talking about the really big money, like the 30 or 50 million rounds, post Series A rounds, then it's hard for startups to find it in Switzerland, or practically impossible. There's a number of factors that have got to do with it, but that's really hard. We notice that, and we're trying to change that. And secondly, Switzerland is, by the nature, it's a small country, and we speak 4 languages. So there is not, you have to go outside of Switzerland very soon. There is 4 different languages. So it's not like you can just, if you were starting in the UK or the US, you don't have a big market at your doorstep that you can start. You will have to go abroad, which makes it extremely interesting, but also, I think, challenging for some, for young companies.
Right. Yes, that makes sense. And in terms of your streams of initiatives at the Swiss Startup Association, so I've kind of noticed 3 main streams. And I was wondering maybe if we could talk a little bit about each of them one by one. So the first one, very interesting, is your political engagement. So maybe we could start there and hear a little bit about what you do in that regard.
Sure. So we are, as I mentioned earlier, we're committed to improving the economic policy framework for the startups in Switzerland. And currently, the couple of most important issues is, for example, we call it startup visas, meaning the visas for founders that come from countries outside of the EU but study at Swiss universities. So there is, the law that people that come from outside of the EU do not just get a work permit. So it's extremely hard for them to get a work permit, therefore extremely hard to found their company here. So we want to make it this easier, and also, allow them to work, because otherwise, the whole knowledge and education is being basically, it's paid in Switzerland, then brought abroad to, another country, which absolutely doesn't make sense. Then the second thing that we're trying to improve, which is super complex, because in Switzerland, everything is, we're a federal state, so every canton has different laws. So the second thing that we're trying to find a better solution is the taxation of the so-called ESOP, employee stock option plan, which means, where are these startups being taxed? So we want to find a better solution, rather than having to pay taxes in every canton where you have an employee. That's really hard. And then the last thing is, that's currently on the table, is also that we want to exempt employees with company shares of the working time registration, which is mandatory in Switzerland. So whoever is a founder or has a part of shares in the company does not need to, because it's your company. So if you want to work more hours than 8 to 5, that should be allowed without having to register these employee hours. Another thing that we're looking at in the future that's on our map is the whole ESG, so environmental, social, and government factors, which are a topic that is very important, but it's also quite complex. And for startups, complexity means it takes away resources from them. It's a lot of work. They don't have an HR department or another department or legal department that can take care of it. So we want to try and find better solutions, or simplified solutions for startups. That's sort of the
right. Super. Yes, and I believe the legislation is also evolving around these aspects right now in Switzerland. So I'm sure there's a lot to do. And just to stay on that aspect about your political engagement and whatnot for a minute. So I'm collecting a few information that makes a lot of sense. So if I've started my company abroad and I'm thinking about coming to Switzerland, so I do want to look into taxes being different in different part of the country. Where does it make the most sense for regarding the language as well? And maybe the ecosystem, because I'm sure each part of Switzerland has its own specialties. Are there other things you would recommend to pay attention to decide where in Switzerland specifically trying to implement yourself? the language, the ecosystem, taxes for sure. Are they over asked? Would you think that summarizes it pretty well?
I think you summarized it pretty well. Obviously, there is, the cities like Zurich and also the Lausanne, Geneva, French-speaking area. These are sort of where the biggest ecosystems, the biggest players are, and naturally there is the biggest offers. But there is also, for example, the Zug with more the focus on crypto, for example, or fintech. So there is, it varies, but I guess I think you summed it up pretty well that,
Okay,
you have to check. But yeah.
Pretty traditional criteria for sure. And then you have a program called the Youth Minds program. Would you like to present it to the audience and tell us a little bit the advantages of it?
Sure. We call it the Young Minds program. It's something that we do. We noticed that there is a lot of, initiatives around university students. So there is the ETH Entrepreneur Club, for example. There's a lot of these at the University of St. Gallen. They have an entrepreneur club. But what Switzerland is not very good at yet is actually entrepreneurship for students at a younger stage. So we want to bring the topic entrepreneurship to schools for students between 16 and 18 of age. We want to make sure that they are aware of, that there is this option to actually found your own company. We want to make sure that they are not scared of it and that they also see that, the academic path is not the only path that is a good path for the future. And I think that's something that we're not really good in Switzerland yet. And we want to try and support that. For example, this weekend we are doing a workshop at the Digital Festival, where two of our board members, who are both startup founders, are having a workshop about, what is entrepreneurship? What does it mean? How do you go from developing an idea into making this your own company? What do you need to do? So we have that. We try to engage ourselves at schools. We have a person in our team who's specifically approaching schools and trying to talk to them and make sure that we get that entrepreneurship gets a representation, and we provide them with tailor-made workshops, etc., so they can have something ready to cook for their students.
And that's a great initiative. And geographically speaking, have you been able to take the program in different parts of Switzerland yet, or?
Not yet. We're working on it. Actually, we've just started. We got a bit of financing from the Gebhard Rüff Stiftung in Basel. We just got the first financing kickoff from them to start with the implementation. But as we are the Swiss Startup Association, our goal is really to be represented in all the different areas in Switzerland, language-wise, and also, the regions, which is, I think, a big topic that's on the agenda for 2024 and 25.
That's very exciting. Fantastic. And out of curiosity, that wasn't exactly my list of questions, but to bounce back on this, what are the reactions? Do you know how students tend to react to this workshop? Are they excited or maybe a little bit bewildered, or what's the type of reactions you've noticed?
Actually, we always ask them, what did this make you want to become an entrepreneur or not? Or so we do have some results, and funny enough, it was about almost half, I think 40% of the students who attended the sessions at school that we had so far said that they could see or envision themselves as startup founders. And what is also important is about a third said they could see themselves work for a startup. And I think that's also something that can be very inspiring, because inspiring founders inspire other people to found their company, to set up their own company. And we've seen this with some of the founders, the successful founders, that, I mean, there's lots of people that create spin-offs of these or create something else, and which I always find is really great when that happens.
Absolutely. For sure. And for your third stream, it's about female founders. So I'm very excited to talk a little bit about that as well. And I will confess that I have very little knowledge about the state of female leadership in Switzerland. So I am taking all information where we're at. Are we on a good track? Or what's happening? And of course, your program.
I think this is we are by far not where we should be. There is still the amount of female founders compared to male founders is really, really small. But what we want to do is we want to change that. We want to make sure that more female founders are successful, but also that women, want to found, to start their own company. And we've started, supporting networking opportunities, but there is lots of different smaller initiatives that we try to, help with by providing them a platform. We're as the Umbrella Association, we have currently 11,000 LinkedIn followers. So we have a platform that, at least it's a voice. And we certainly want to, want to improve that. Right now, I think it's also recently the awareness that this is still a problem has increased a lot. So it is much better than it used to be. By far, we're not there yet. We try to support it. We also believe that further down the road, there could be special mentoring programs for females, because it is proven, for example, that, if you're talking to a male VC, it's different for a woman than a man. So how do you deal with that, and how do you adapt to that situation, and how can you perform? And it's about being aware of what you need to do and how you need to handle these situations. And I think that's something that we really want to try and tackle and make sure that it gets better.
Absolutely, that's a great goal. And I'm putting you on the spot again a little bit with another question about this. But when you've been talking over the years with female founders that you've supported, or that you've had the chance to meet, talking about this topic, what would they say? What are some of the main reasons that female founders have identified as making it difficult for them to thrive out there? I don't know if out of the blue you have a few things that come to mind regarding like what may cause that situation at the moment.
So we are ourselves a comparably young organization. We were founded 2015, but everything was sort of a bit in a winter sleep until 2020, until the current president took over. So I only have I'd say a 1.5 year lifespan of the Swiss Startup Association that I can talk about. But what I have heard is from female founders that simple things, for example, there is this extremely competitive pitching, a pitch battle, how it has to happen, with the buzzer, which is a very not every woman might feel comfortable doing that. So, a different approach to things, or also not every woman, if you're surrounded by, in a room where, females are about 10% of the crowd, not every woman feels comfortable in there. And I think this is something that you need to address, and that you need to make sure that it's not like that. And also, can you adapt certain procedures that were, very sort of male dominated, which I think can be improved. Some also mentions that, it was just so different. If I went in as the CEO, the VCs looked very different to me versus my partner, who was the CTO, so technically reporting to me, but it was a very different situation. And I think that is something you have to be aware of it, and you have to address it.
Absolutely. Thank you for raising these points. And now to shift a little bit the conversation, I was hoping we could talk about partnerships. I assumed that as an association, you probably rely also on several partnerships. So I was wondering if there are some that you would like to talk about today.
Yeah, sure. So we are a nonprofit organization. So by default, we can't just live off love and air, unfortunately. So we need to finance ourselves, and we are financed by membership contributions and partnership, partnerships with corporates, for example, a Swisscom Ventures or a Deloitte or an AXA Insurance. And what is important to us is that our partners share our mission and our values and support us. So we don't see ourselves just as a lead generation for lead generator of for them, but we also see that, or we see them as equal partners that work with us, that sometimes it's been incredibly fruitful. And I'd like to mention as an example, Swisscom Ventures. They came on board as our very first big partner. And I think everybody has that moment, all you need is that one big success story, someone that believes in you and says, hey, you can do this. And Swisscom Ventures was that partner for us that said, hey, let's go, let's do it, you guys are cool. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. And it's been I believe a very a win-win situation. So it's not just about them giving us money, but it's also that they support our events, they support our mission, and all of their portfolio companies are members of the Swiss Startup Association. So Swisscom supports them through making them part of our community. And I think that's a fantastic partnership. It's something that I believe is very beneficial for both of us, and that we appreciate. So I think it's these kind of partnerships are great to have, and we're very thankful for that.
For sure. I imagine. And talking about connection, maybe I can do a segue to a bigger level. We touched a little bit about this before when you were saying that it's important fairly quickly to look beyond Switzerland to run your business, which makes sense, but it's nice to hear from someone in the field of the startup ecosystem, because I'm not, no, or not yet. But so I was wondering, talking about this, so would you say that the Swiss startup ecosystem easily connect with your countries first and foremost, or is there maybe a strategy to look beyond and to look at other continents? I didn't want to assume the answer to that and wanted to ask you.
Yeah, no, we work closely with other startup associations. There is also this organization called Allied for Startups in Europe. It's a loose collaboration, I would say. It's about exchanging challenges. We talk to each other. There's sometimes very similar challenges in the different countries in Europe. At the same time, we are the Swiss umbrella association. So we, yes, we collaborate loosely, but at the same time, our focus is inside of Switzerland, and that's where we spend our resources in.
Okay, good to know. I will also look it up and possibly add a link to it. That's good to know. And I guess to finish the interview, maybe one last question or two. What is leadership to you? I like asking this question to many of my interviewees, and or if you prefer, I was tailoring it here to what are the soft skills that you would say are required or very helpful to lead a startup?
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting question. I think it's there's, to me, leadership is directing or motivating a group of people to achieve a specific goal, and my role as the leader is to enable them to be successful, so to get the obstacles out of the way so they can perform. I don't think that's different from whether you're in a big company or in a small company, but obviously if your team is very small, the individual has a lot more weight, I would say, in the whole success, you know, because if it's not working, the team is everything. If the team's not working, you can just forget about it. If you're, you know, say 3, 4, 5 team members and one person doesn't fit in, it's really tragic. In a bigger corporate company, you can maybe absorb it in a different way, you know, that you can manage your way around it. So what I think in terms of what is needed in skills for startup founders, it's really, I think on one hand, you need to be able to build a good team. You need to find a good co-founder, and you need to be able to be a good team builder. You need to be a good communicator. Communication is everything. And as you grow, I believe that adaptability is one of the big things, because as a startup, you start maybe as 2, 3 people, and then you have to evolve. Everything has to evolve because you grow. So you have to sort of take on new roles, you know, at some point, maybe, you know, you have to, yes, co-founders, who's going to be the CEO? You know, when you hire the first layer of management, like a sales director, who's going to do that? And also, can you let go of your old roles and move into these new roles? And then as you grow even further, as an example, maybe you decide that you missed a time when you were in, you know, still the engineer, when you were on the, you know, have your hands on the product, and you're no longer that person. You're now the boss, and you know, leadership, daily administration, finance, HR, all those kind of things. So maybe also to realize, when is the time to hire a professional CEO? Or when do you need a finance person? So you constantly have to move into these different roles and evolve. Your board has to evolve. You have to, there's so many things you need to know that you probably have never heard of, whether it's, as I mentioned, finance or HR. So this whole change, and it requires a lot of energy. So you need resilience. You need to find a way to recharge your batteries, because you will work a lot, and you need to find a way to keep the balance, because it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You have to run at marathon pace, and not at the, you know, you can sprint maybe a certain distance, but not, it won't work in the long run. So you have to do that. And then I think also, as a CEO of a startup, you have to sell your company, you have to network. And if that's not, you know, in your nature, if you don't feel comfortable with that, it's hard, but you have to do it. So I think that's lots and lots of skills you need to have.
That you can learn, right? You can also train yourself to get there if you don't feel like you have them.
I believe it's like when you become a parent, you know, everybody who doesn't have kids says, oh, I could never do that. Well, guess what? When you have kids, you just do it. You have to. And I think as a startup founder, it's probably in a way similar. It's your baby. It means a lot to you. The success depends on you. And at the same time, you have to make sure that you know, but you can ask for advice. You know, that's what we always say to the startup founders. Don't try to solve it yourself. You can get advice and share. That's why we do networking. Learn from the others. Ask how the others have solved a problem or a situation. So, and in the end, another thing that we always hear about is founder disputes. You know, you have to make sure that you align on your vision. Where do you want to go? How fast do you grow? What do you want to do? So it is a challenging path, but incredibly rewarding, and hopefully a successful one as well.
Absolutely, for sure. And it's very interesting that you raised the adaptability this concept, because it's exactly what came out of the last Café Croissant, like networking event that I went to with Fongit, that supports startups in Geneva. And same thing, I can't remember, but someone presented the organization and said adaptability, because sometimes some founders stay fixated on what they wanted to do originally, when in reality, you can discover that needs are elsewhere, or there's just other type of opportunities that come to you. So adaptability can be is really, really important, even if it's your baby and you really care about it. Just being able to let it grow.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing all this insight on the work that you do. And And I will look forward to learn more in the future.
Thank you, Eloise. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.